I was gonna do a video earlier, but my computer kept crapping out on me, and I come to the perspective that the video that I was doing was too self-indulgent, so I'm just gonna try to stay on point this time, for this cut. So, anyways, the economy is sure in shit shape, isn't it? Can we at least, as like fellow white people, agree on a few ground principles as we go into this? Like, at least that much? So here's what I'm going to say. It doesn't matter when it comes to the truth if you accept the truth or if you live in denial of the truth. It is still the truth. You know, it doesn't matter if you don't like the truth remains the truth, right? I would think that those are reasonable things and conclusions to make, basically, right? So if all of that is true, following from that, I would say that you may not like the reality here, but the truth of the matter is that the United States has a quota on the number of visas and green cards that it allows that is not set based on the amount of need of labor that is actually out there, by corporations and by small business owners and farmers and all those people, the amount of immigrants that we accept on the legal market is not actually the amount of work that we actually need. And so what happens is that these gaps exist in the economy, and as a result, they're filled in by illegal immigration. That's the reality and the truth about the matter. Now, this has created a lot of anger, and people have wanted to deport a lot of these people for a very long time, but I would say the following about it. Most of them came here because wages were higher here for the same work that they would get in Mexico. They came here to work, they want to work, they don't really want to to get involved in drugs and that sort of thing. I mean, there are people that are coming up here to do that with the Mexican cartels, but most of the immigration forces that have come immigrants that have come up here are not involved with those people work and everything because the wages are just so much better and everything. And so if you deport them, you're removing like a considerable amount of the workforce from the labor pool and everything and just putting them out. And the thing is that that work is not going to be done by white people instead, when this happens because the whole reason why this is happening why they hire these people in the first place isn't because they want to save money. It's because they can't find enough white people to actually do that work, the amount of them that they actually need. I mean, it's not that white people never do landscaping work. I go out in my community, I walk around, I see people doing landscaping work all the time, and they're all thoroughly white. White people love working on their gardens. It's just that there aren't enough of and a lot of them feel like essentially I like working in my garden, but I get worn out so easily, and I want somebody else to finish the job for me. That's the thing that leads to people hiring these people. That's the kind of thing that leads to them getting hired in the first place and everything. And when you deport a huge number of these people, it's going to hurt the economy far more than any good it will do for everybody. And when it comes to an immigrant is keeping my wages low, well, sir, like no, union membership being in decline kept your wages low. Wages have been stagnant for way since way back in the 80s, man. Like they've not gone up. Meant to do it. I mean, maybe a few people get raises here and there, but it just doesn't trickle down to most people in the economy and everything. And so what we've seen is productivity has skyrocketed and wages have become have not done well at all, but that trend has been ongoing for like since the Reagan administration started cracking down on the unions. It's not new. An immigrant didn't do this to you. Reagan and his union busting did, and the fact that it sent union membership into free fall is why that's happening. Join a fucking union, you'll start to see your wages go up, and everything as a result, especially if you get more of your employers with you and are able to use, collective bargaining power against your employer's desire to keep your wage low. When they're going to have to replace tons and tons of people to get rid of you, they're going to start to agree to your terms at some point, and everything. It's going to get a lot easier to reach a deal with them. So, the fact that the decline of organized labor has been really quite decline of the middle class and the economic stratification that's happened to the economy over the last, 20 and 30 years. I mean, this trend is not new. That's what gets me is that, you're finding people that are suddenly saying that it's immigrants, but it's union membership. I mean, as union membership went into decline, wages started to go stagnant and they stopped climbing. And it's right there in the figures, and you might say correlation is not causation, and that is a good point, but considering what the unions did and what they were responsible for, it's more than likely causation. It's probable, very probable that it was, as opposed to other causes, and so, I mean, we may not be like 100% certain of that, but I mean, if you give it some thought at all, it's more than likely the case that that is the cause ultimately of what's been going on in the economy. And by the way, most economists operate on a basis of correlation anyways. Most economic arguments rely on that rather than, actual proof of causation. You know, like it doesn't get more sophisticated than that in economics usually, and everything. And so yeah, I mean, I would blame union membership rather than immigration. When you kick these people out, you lose the people that are picking the crops and stuff, and crops go out on the field, and you end up with shortages. And what gets prices down, but an abundant supply. So, we're running short of the food, that is needed. We're running short on nitrogen-based fertilizers still because of the war in the two countries that exported the most of it, Russia and Ukraine. Those crises are still ongoing to this very day. It's not, things have not changed in that regard. And then on top of all that shit, then, Putin's crap that he's put the world through and the crappy situation that he's, putting us all through and putting us into Foxville about all of this. You have on top of that, you have the president, and Trump was seen as far too much up the ass of Israel by Tehran, and Tehran responded to that by closing down the Strait of Hormuz and everything, and cutting off the oil supply. So gas is now like at $5 a gallon, and everything, and that screws my business operations too, effectively. I tried to start my own company to get around this whole having to start at the bottom shit. I didn't want to do that, and so I decided to just shut up my own shop. But look what's happened. Almost immediately after I did that, the American people looked at this shitbag who doesn't know what he's doing on economics and doesn't understand any of it, even though he's so confident that he does. But it's, like, I don't know how true the Dunning-Kruger effect is anymore, but it would be a glorious example of somebody that's too stupid about economics to realize that they're incompetent. Trump does, he like let me just take some pot shots at his business sense here for a minute. He started the Trump steaks, brand with this idea that, Trump steaks were going to be so much better than every other kind of steak. Word on the street was that the steak wasn't that much better than everybody else's, and it was so much more expensive than everybody else's, and on top of that, the only place that you could buy them was the Sharper Image, where as a white person I can tell you I've been in the Sharper Image. I've gone to it. Been in a mall. I've gone to it. I go to it maybe once or twice a year, you know, as opposed to Walmart or some other retailer that, is more every day for us. Like for us, it's Fred Meyer's, but, for a majority of the country, it's Walmart. So, you would want to partner with selling your steaks at Walmart prices, but, if you sell a lot of them, then you're going to make money. It doesn't matter if your margins are like $10 a steak. If you sell 100,000, 100 million units of this stuff, and or you sell, a bunch of them on a constant basis, then you've got passive income, and that's coming in the door. And if it's only $10 a profit, but you sell 100,000 units of it, I mean, let's just do the math. 10 times 100,000. You're already at $1 million every time this happens, and imagine that this is happening every single week. So you're at $4 million a month at that point you know, and then over the year, we multiply that out by 12 and we get to $48,000 a year. as a consequence of just, making $10 on, 100,000 steaks every week, And if you sell more units than that, it's going to go even higher and everything. It doesn't take making very much money on every sale if you do a ton of sales to start adding up to some real money and everything. But Trump doesn't have any business sense. He was selling massively expensive steaks with absolutely insane margins and everything. And as a consequence, like almost nobody bought one of them. And then he was also selling them at a place the average person doesn't visit that often at all in the economy. So it's like no wonder the Trump steaks failed. They partnered with the Sharper Image, which most people don't even visit, maybe more than like once a year ultimately, and everything. We just don't go to the mall that often, and like most white people are the same way. And so, that's just the thing, like the best mall in the area is like a good drive from us where we live now and everything. It's all the way out in Tigard, and we're Forest Grove area. That's a good hour and a half away, an hour and a half drive just to, walk in the front door of the mall that, and everything. And so it's not visited that often. It is always a special occasion when we go and everything, and usually by the time we go, like everybody really wants to do it to some extent. And, so you've got this whole situation where he's selling it at this one place that, most people don't visit very often. Like, he doesn't have sense about his business ideas in a lot of ways, He's almost every business venture that he's gone down has gone up in flames and everything, and he's got there's this perception out there from, The Apprentice that he, is insanely smart about economics, but the thing about reality TV is that it isn't based in reality. They do so much to, you know, it's been revealed multiple times that reality TV, people will do so much to instigate the drama that you see develop on those shows and to push the people to do these dramatic things for the sake of the show and everything. And a lot of the time they do it and they start a bunch of drama because they're being pushed into starting a bunch of drama for the show. It's all staged, you know? And everything. Reality TV has never really been reality. It's not real at all. And, The Apprentice is no different. Trump was not really a successful businessman. He was a con. Like, and this is a guy that got famous shafting his contractors, and, he's somehow seen as just absolutely brilliant about economics, but, his worldview, tariffs, 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 and everything. And the problem with that, okay, is that in essence, I think that we all know this, but if you've watched Humans Need Not Apply by CGP Cray, you already know this. Like, if manufacturing were to come back to the United States, it would mostly be done by robots. It's just the reality. There will be a few jobs that are created, but those jobs need advanced degrees because they're so sophisticated that you need advanced training to even do them and everything. So a lot of schooling and everything that's involved with it and everything, and you can still get that work if you work really hard for it. But that's it's not going to create that many jobs anymore. Most of the jobs in manufacturing at this point haven't been so much shipped off to China as they've been automated out of existence. A machine does them now, not a person. So, bringing manufacturing back to the United States will create more jobs for robots because we don't live in 1800 anymore, like if we if the world we were living in were still that world and everything, then tariffing all those other countries might do a lot to bring manufacturing back to United States. If we were living like at the start of the Industrial Revolution, it might bring manufacturing back to the United States. But we live in 2026, and automation has come leaps and bounds and everything, and is able to do so much of the work than it used to be able to do. And so, those jobs have largely just disappeared, and so manufacturing will be done by far fewer people in the future if it comes back to the United States, and it won't create jobs at scale, at the scale that people want and are hoping for. And I don't mean to like poke your bubble or anything, but this is the truth. And I mean, I've been razor focused on the truth and trying to keep things very, very honest about economic matters and everything. And so that's why this whole theory of, we're gonna be a productive economy again because we're gonna tariff the shit out of these foreign providers and competition is just so fatally flawed in its assumptions. It's not gonna create that many jobs for people at the end of the day. It just isn't, there just isn't work at scale in manufacturing anymore at the scale that people are hoping for. It's gone. You know? So, that's a really big problem and it makes the tariff so asinine and, you know, uh completely stupid what Trump says they're going to do. Like it's I mean, if it was going to work, it would already be doing what people wanted it to do, and it's not. It's a disaster. So, you've been blown by the fact your economy has been fucked by like as I see it, like three blows at this point. Our over loyalty to Israel, our that has turned Iran against us and led to the oil supply being choked off. You've had my business would have made sense when shipping was cheap, but it's not anymore. You know, but you pissed Iran off, and they cut us off of the oil supply and everything. So, there's one blow. You put tariffs up on everybody and everything, every other country in the world. So there's another blow. Those countries retaliated with their own tariffs. So there's another blow ultimately. And then finally, you deported almost all you deported a huge number of the immigrants, many of whom thought they were here illegally, you know, and everything. Maybe they assumed wrong, but that was their assumption, and everything. And your economy has been put through the meat grinder by the president. And like I said, I've been saying this for a while. Republicans love to poke the bear. They love to say that, Democrats are economically incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. They don't understand the economy. But, then they went and elected this guy who's engaged in an 18th century philosophical school that was killed off by Adam Smith and the Wealth of Nations, because to a huge extent, the Wealth of Nations was a treatise against protectionism. When they talk about the division of labor, they're not just talking about the division of labor within a country. They're talking about the fact that it everybody is better off when the division of labor, lets the countries that are good at doing certain things do those things that they're good at, and we do the things that we're good at in the United States and everything, and everybody is better off for it. I mean, like if you read The Wealth of Nations, if you actually read it, you're going to hear a lot about the division of labor, and you might fly completely over your head what Adam Smith was talking about, but he was basically saying, let the countries that are good at doing this manufacturing do it, because we're all better off if we let that happen, as opposed to protectionism. And I know that that point flew over a bunch of people who read the book's head, but he was talking about that and everything. What he was trying to say is let those countries do it and don't tariff them, because, we're all better off as a result of that, of letting those countries do those things that they're able to do cheaper than than other countries and everything. And, that has become more and more true as the world marches on, and everything, because, I can tell you that there are some horrors associated with free trade, but the protectionism is much worse. It can always get worse, and protectionism is worse than free trade, and everything, and also when you talk about low wages, if your wage goes up as a customer at your store, and everything, I'm gonna have to pay more for your inventory because the business is going to take that loss. It's going to recover that loss from somewhere. They're going to shift their cost around, and eventually it's just going to be shifted onto the customer and everything. So, I've got an incentive myself to maybe not want your wage to go up, but and really all of us do, because, like I said, I mean, we're gonna pay more for it at the storefront if these people's wages go up. It's got to be passed on to the consumers of goods and services. So, yeah. Anyways, that doesn't mean I don't think we might be better off. It might be easier to build a business if people were paid more in the system. So I'm, kind of on the side of the proletariat, so to speak. I do want the wage to go up because it means that there's more people that are able to shop at my stores, you know, and everything. But, it just, I don't know, like, it's been tough. And when shipping cost went way up, e-commerce stopped really making sense. It just kind of shot everything into shit because it's just too expensive to fucking ship packages if it's not covered by somebody else and everything. So my business is just in absolute pause mode, wondering when this chaos in the oil market is going to clear up, or at least, the shift to electric vehicles will push that into, when the shipping companies will buy enough electric vehicles. I don't expect relief anytime soon. So, this is just shit. Trump has been punching the economy one after the other, one blow after another, after another, after another. This reality is, it just goes to show you the left understands the economy, despite the fact that the right has been saying that we don't, and a lot better than they do, and everything. Like, Trump is not a successful businessman. He's a lucky loser, you know. Every one of his business ventures has ultimately been a failure for him and everything else, and he just doesn't know what to do with money at all. He has not learned anything from the amount of failures that he has had. And the only thing that has really enriched him is actually winning the presidency and everything. But he's a dumbass, and the fact of the matter is that he's probably just going to lose it all over again because once he leaves office, he's going to bet it on a bunch of stupid shit, just like he always does. Anyways, just so you know, he just played a rich and successful businessman on The Apprentice. It doesn't mean he actually was one. Anyways, I'm out. Our president is a fucking idiot and everything. He doesn't understand economics. He thinks he's a fucking genius. He's in fact a dumbass, and everything. And I mean, I know that you don't like being told that robots are doing most of the automation work, but they are. And I know that you don't like being told that immigrants are doing a lot of the work, but they are. And if you deport them, it will do far more harm than good. And I know that you don't like hearing that, but it is the truth.